She sold hot meals from a tiny roadside stand, and every afternoon, she quietly fed the same homeless little boy. No questions, no cameras, no expectations. But one morning, four black SUVs pulled up in front of her food stand, engines running, doors opening, and the entire street froze. The boy she thought she knew wasn't who she thought he was at all. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The street didn't make the news. It was the kind of road people passed through, not the kind they remembered. A narrow sidewalk, a cracked curb, and a single food stand pushed up against a faded brick wall. Every morning before sunrise, she unlocked her cooler, set up her folding table, and started cooking. She wasn't chasing success. She was chasing stability. At 32, she was already tired in a way she didn't have words for. Divorced, drowning in debt, one missed payment away from losing everything. But she still cooked, because if she stopped, she didn't know who she'd be. That was when she noticed the boy. He didn't ask for food. He didn't hover. He just waited. Same bench, same time, every day. And there was something about the way he sat, hands folded, eyes down, that didn't feel like childhood. Why was a child that young always alone? She had been running her food stand on this corner for almost 3 years. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she was younger. Back when she thought she'd be a chef in some upscale restaurant with her name on the door. But life had a way of rewriting your plans whether you liked it or not. Her ex-husband had left her with half the bills and none of the savings. The apartment she could barely afford was 20 minutes away by bus. She'd wake up at 4 in the morning, pack her ingredients, haul everything to the street corner, and start her day before most people even opened their eyes. The work was exhausting. Her back ached. Her feet throbbed. But the stand was hers. That mattered. She sold breakfast sandwiches, homemade biscuits, scrambled eggs with cheese, and coffee that people said was better than anything you could get at the chain shops. Her regulars knew her by name. There was the mailman who always ordered extra bacon. There was the nurse who worked night shifts and stopped by on her way home. There was the old man who'd sit on the curb and tell her stories about the neighborhood from 40 years ago. These people kept her going. They didn't know how close she was to breaking. How many nights she sat at her kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, trying to figure out which one she could ignore for another week. They just knew her food was good and her smile was warm. The boy started showing up in late April. She noticed him immediately because kids that age didn't usually come to her stand alone. He looked about 7, maybe 8, small for his age. He had dark hair that fell into his eyes and a jacket that seemed too heavy for the weather. He'd sit on the bench across the street about 20 feet away and just watch. At first, she thought maybe he was waiting for someone. Parent running an errand. An older sibling. But no one ever came. He'd sit there for an hour, sometimes longer, and then he'd get up and walk away. No phone. No backpack. Just him. Tugged at something inside her. A quiet alarm she couldn't ignore. On the third day, she made an extra sandwich. She wrapped it in foil, walked across the street, and held it out to him. The boy looked up at her with wide eyes, surprised, maybe even a little scared. He didn't take it right away. He just stared. She crouched down so she was at his level. "You hungry?" she asked gently. He nodded, slowly. She handed him the sandwich. He took it with both hands like it was fragile, like it might disappear if he wasn't careful. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, he said his name. She smiled. "I run that food stand over there. You can come by anytime. Okay? If you're hungry, I'll make sure you eat." He didn't say anything else. He just nodded again and unwrapped the sandwich. She watched him take the first bite and something in her chest loosened. She didn't know his story yet, but she knew hunger when she saw it. After that, he came every single day. Like clockwork. Around 7:30 in the morning, just as the early rush was winding down, he'd appear. He'd sit on that same bench, and she would bring him a plate. Sometimes it was eggs and toast. Sometimes a biscuit with jam. Sometimes leftover pancakes from a catering order she'd done the night before. He never asked. She never made him. It became part of her routine. Prep, cook, serve, feed the boy. Felt right. But the more she watched him, the more questions piled up in her mind. Where did he live? Why wasn't he in school? And why did he always look over his shoulder before he ate, like he was expecting someone to tell him to stop? She started paying closer attention. His clothes were clean, but they didn't fit well. His shoes had holes near the toes. His jacket was worn thin at the elbows. But his face was always washed. His hair, though messy, wasn't dirty. He didn't smell like someone living on the street. He didn't have that hollow look some homeless kids carried, the kind that came from months of surviving on nothing. He looked sad, yes. Tired, yes. But cared for in some distant way. Confused her. One morning, she asked him where he went after he left. He looked down at his plate and shrugged. Around, he said quietly. She didn't push. She could tell he wasn't ready to talk. So she just nodded and let him eat in peace. The regulars started noticing. The nurse asked one morning if the boy was okay. She told her she didn't know but that she was keeping an eye on him. The mailman suggested she call child services. But she hesitated. She'd heard too many stories about kids being pulled from bad situations and dropped into worse ones. She didn't want to be the reason he ended up somewhere that hurt him. So instead, she kept feeding him, kept talking to him, kept trying to earn his trust. Slowly, over the weeks, he started opening up. Little things. He liked drawing. He'd never been to the ocean. His favorite color was blue. These small pieces of himself felt like gifts, and she held on to every one. One morning in early June, he showed up with a bruise on his cheek. It was faint, yellowish, like it was a few days old, but she saw it immediately. Her stomach dropped. She set down the spatula she was holding and walked over to him. "What happened to your face?" she asked carefully. He touched his cheek and looked away. "I fell," he said. His voice was flat, rehearsed. She knelt down in front of him. "You can tell me the truth," she said softly. "I'm not going to be mad. I just want to make sure you're safe." For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her. His lips parted. His eyes filled with something heavy. But then he shook his head. "I fell," he repeated. And she knew she wasn't going to get more than that. Not today. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in her head. The bruise. The way he'd looked at her. The way he'd shut down. She thought about calling the police. But what would she even say? A kid had a bruise? Kids got bruises all the time. She had no proof of anything. No last name. No address. Just a first name and a feeling in her gut that something was very wrong. She made a decision that night. She was going to follow him. Not to invade his privacy. Not to scare him. But to understand. Because if he was in danger, she needed to know. And if he wasn't, then at least she could stop imagining the worst. The next morning, she did something she'd never done before. She closed her stand early. She told her regulars she wasn't feeling well and packed up by 9. The boy had already come and gone by then, like he always did. But this time she had watched which direction he walked. East, toward the old industrial part of town where the warehouses were. She waited a few minutes, then followed. She kept her distance, staying a block behind, weaving between parked cars and storefronts so he wouldn't notice her. Her heart was pounding. She felt guilty, but she kept going. He walked for almost 15 minutes, his hands shoved in his pockets, his head down. He didn't stop, didn't look around. He moved like someone who'd made this walk 100 times before. Finally, he turned down a narrow alley between 2 abandoned buildings. She hesitated at the mouth of the alley. It was quiet, too quiet. She took a breath and stepped inside. The alley smelled like rust and old rain. There were broken pallets stacked against the walls. Graffiti covered every surface. And at the far end, tucked behind a dumpster, was a door. The boy knocked 3 times. A pause. Then twice more. Pattern. The door opened just a crack, and she saw a hand reach out. A woman's hand. Thin. Weathered. The boy slipped inside, and the door closed behind him. She stood there, frozen. Who was that? What was this place? And why was a child coming here every single day? She wanted to knock on that door herself. She wanted answers. but something stopped her. Fear, maybe, or instinct. Instead, she turned around and walked back the way she came, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't want to believe. Over the next few days, she couldn't let it go. She kept seeing that door in her mind. That hand. The way he had knocked like it was a secret code. She thought about telling someone. A teacher. A social worker. Anyone. But she still didn't have enough information. And what if she was wrong? What if that woman was his mother, and they were just struggling, and her interference made everything worse? She felt trapped between wanting to help and not wanting to cause harm. So she did the only thing she knew how to do. She kept showing up, kept feeding him, kept watching, and she waited for him to trust her enough to tell her the truth. Because deep down, she knew that day was coming. She just didn't know it would arrive the way it did. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after she'd followed him, the boy didn't show up. She told herself not to worry. Children miss things all the time, she thought. Maybe he was sick. Maybe something came up. But the bench stayed empty. The next day, still nothing. She kept glancing over at that spot, expecting to see him, but he never came. By the third day, the worry had turned into something heavier. Something she couldn't ignore. She closed her stand early again and started walking. She didn't have an address. She didn't have a plan. She just followed the route she'd seen him take. 3 blocks east, past the old factory, past the vacant lots, until she reached the building. It looked worse up close than it had from a distance. The windows on the ground floor were boarded up, some broken through. The brick was crumbling in places. There was trash piled near the entrance, and the door hung loose on its hinges. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn around, call someone official, let people who were trained for this handle it. But another part of her, the part that had been showing up for the boy every single day, pushed her forward. She stepped inside. The air smelled like mold and dust. The floor was littered with debris. There were old mattresses, broken furniture, graffiti on every wall. It was dark, even in the middle of the afternoon, because most of the windows were covered. She called out softly. Her voice echoed. No response. She moved deeper into the building, her heart pounding. Then she heard it. A cough. Faint. Coming from somewhere to her left. She followed the sound down a narrow hallway and into what might have once been an office. Inside, on a thin, stained mattress pushed against the wall, was a woman. She was lying on her side, wrapped in a blanket that looked like it had been pulled from a dumpster. Her face was pale. Her lips were dry and cracked. She looked sick, very sick. She rushed over and knelt beside her. "Can you hear me?" she said, her voice urgent. The woman's eyes fluttered open. Took her a moment to focus. When she saw her, something like relief crossed her face, but it was mixed with shame. "You shouldn't be here," the woman whispered. She ignored that. "Where's the boy?" she asked. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I sent him to stay with someone," she said, her voice barely audible. "Didn't want him to see me like this." She felt her chest tighten. "How long have you been like this?" she asked. The woman closed her eyes. "Few days. Maybe more. I don't know." She looked around the room. There was a plastic jug of water nearly empty. A few cans of food, unopened. Some pill bottles, most of them empty. This wasn't living. This was barely surviving. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling an ambulance," she said. The woman's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "No," she said, her voice stronger now, desperate. "Please. They'll take him. They'll put him in the system. Can't lose him. He's all I have." She looked into the woman's eyes and saw the terror there. The kind of fear that comes from knowing the system doesn't always save people. Sometimes it just shuffles them around. Sometimes it breaks them further. She put her phone away. "Okay," she said quietly. "No ambulance. But you need help. Real help. And I'm not leaving you here." The woman's grip loosened. She started to cry, silent tears running down her face. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired of fighting." She sat down on the floor beside the mattress and took the woman's hand. "I know," she said, "but you don't have to fight alone anymore." And then, for the first time, the woman let herself break. She sobbed. Deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and buried. She didn't say anything. She just held her hand and let her cry. When the woman finally calmed down, she started to talk. Slowly at first, then faster, like she'd been holding the words in for too long and they were finally spilling out. She told her about her life before all of this. She'd had a job once. A real one. She'd had an apartment. She'd had stability. But then she got sick. Medical bills piled up. She lost her job because she couldn't work. She lost her apartment because she couldn't pay rent. Her family had abandoned her years ago. She had no safety net. No support system. Just her and the boy. And she was determined to keep him safe no matter what. But there was something else. Something the woman hadn't told anyone. Years ago, before the boy was born, she'd helped someone. A young man who was struggling to get his business off the ground. She didn't have much, but she gave him what she could. A few $1,000s. Not a loan. A gift. She told him to pay it forward if he ever made it. She never saw him again after that. Life moved on. She had the boy. Built what life she could. Then she got sick. And everything crumbled. She'd thought about that man sometimes. Wondered if his business had worked out. But she never tried to find him. She didn't want him to feel obligated. She didn't want pity. She listened to all of this, her mind turning. What was his name? She asked gently. The woman hesitated. It doesn't matter now, she said. That was a different life. She didn't push. She could see that the woman wasn't ready to go there. And honestly, she didn't need a name. Because what struck her, sitting on that cold floor in that broken building, was how much dignity the woman still carried. Even now, even here, she wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't playing victim. She was just trying to survive while holding on to the one thing she had left, her son. And that kind of strength, that kind of quiet resilience, deserved more than sympathy. It deserved action. She made a decision in that moment. She was going to find a way to get this woman real help. Not temporary. Not conditional. Real, lasting help. Over the next few hours, she helped the woman sit up, gave her water and got some food into her. The woman protested at first, embarrassed, but she was firm. You can't take care of him if you don't take care of yourself, she said. The woman nodded weakly. She also made arrangements for the boy to stay where he was one more night. Then she helped the woman to her feet. We're getting you out of here, she said. The woman looked around the room, at the place that had been her prison and her shelter. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. She thought for a moment. Then she said, my place. Just for tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. The woman started to shake her head. But she cut her off. I'm not asking, she said gently. And the woman, too tired to argue, finally agreed. Her apartment was small. One bedroom. A couch that doubled as a bed. But it was warm. It was safe. And for the first time in months, the woman slept in a real bed with clean sheets. She stayed up most of the night, sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop, researching. She looked up emergency housing programs, medical assistance programs, legal aid, anything that could help. By the time the sun came up, she had a list. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. When the woman woke up the next morning, she was already on the phone. She spent the entire day making calls, filling out forms, advocating. Some people were helpful. Others were dismissive. But she didn't stop. She was relentless. And slowly, piece by piece, a plan started to come together. Within a week, the woman and the boy were placed in a transitional housing unit through a program she had found. It wasn't much, but it was stable. The woman was also connected with a clinic that specialized in low-income patients. They put her on a treatment plan and helped her apply for assistance. The boy was enrolled in school, and for the first time in over a year, he had a routine that didn't involve worrying about his mother. She visited them often. She brought groceries. She helped with paperwork. She made sure they had everything they needed. But more than that, she just showed up. She sat with the woman when the treatments made her sick. She helped the boy with his homework. She became family, not by blood, but by choice. And that, she realized, was what mattered most. Not obligation, not duty, Just the simple, powerful act of showing up for someone because you believed they were worth it. One evening, about a month after the woman and boy had moved into their new place, she was sitting with the woman at the kitchen table. The boy was in the other room drawing. The woman looked healthier, still tired, still fragile, but there was color in her cheeks again, life in her eyes. She reached across the table and took her hand. "I need to tell you something," the woman said quietly. She looked at her, concerned. "What is it?" The woman took a deep breath. "That man I told you about. The one I helped years ago. I've been thinking about him a lot lately." She nodded, listening. The woman continued, "His name was Daniel Wright. I looked him up a few weeks ago. He's a CEO now. Built a tech company. Worth millions." Her eyes widened. The woman shook her head. "I'm not telling you this because I want his money. I'm telling you because I want you to understand something." The woman's voice was steady now, resolute. "I don't regret helping him, even though I ended up here, even though I lost everything, because that's not how kindness works. You don't give because you expect something back. You give because it's right, because someone needed it. And maybe, somewhere down the line, that kindness ripples out in ways you never see." She felt her throat tighten. The woman squeezed her hand. "You did that for me, for my son. You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything. But you showed up. And you didn't just give us food. You gave us dignity. You saw us as people worth fighting for." Tears were streaming down her face now. The woman smiled softly. "That's what I want him to learn. Not that the world is cruel, but that there are people like you in it. People who care." She couldn't speak. She just held the woman's hand and let the weight of those words settle over her. Because the woman was right. This wasn't about charity. It wasn't about pity. It was about recognizing the humanity in someone else and refusing to look away. It was about believing that everyone, no matter how broken or lost, deserved a chance, deserved to be seen, deserved to be loved. And in that moment, she understood something she hadn't fully grasped before. She wasn't saving anyone. She was just doing what people are supposed to do. Show up, care, fight for each other. That's it. That's everything. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people did that, the world wouldn't feel so heavy, so cold, so impossible. Maybe it would feel a little more like home. Later that night, after she had gone home, she sat on her couch and thought about everything that had happened. About the boy showing up at her stand. About the woman lying on that mattress. About the way their lives had collided and changed each other. She thought about her own struggles. The debt. The exhaustion. The feeling that nothing she did mattered. And she realized that all of it, every hard moment, had led her here. To this. To them. And she wouldn't change it for anything. Because matching isn't about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers or fixing everything. It's about being present. It's about caring enough to try. And that, she thought, was something she could do. Every single day. For the rest of her life. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. The next morning, the boy was back at the stand. Like nothing had changed. Like the world hadn't just shifted under all their feet. She handed him his breakfast, and he sat on the curb like he always did. But this time, there was something different in his eyes. Something lighter. He looked up at her and smiled. A real smile. Not the careful, guarded one she'd seen before, but something genuine. "Thank you," he said quietly. She knelt down beside him. "You don't have to thank me," she said. But he shook his head. "Yes, I do. You saved us." She felt her throat tighten again. "No," she said softly. "You and your mom saved yourselves. I just helped a little." He looked at her with those serious eyes. "You helped a lot." And she realized that maybe both things were true. Maybe survival was always a partnership. Maybe no one ever made it alone. Maybe the whole point of being human was to reach out, to hold on, to refuse to let each other fall. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The woman continued her treatments. The boy thrived in school. And she kept running her stand, showing up every morning before the sun rose, cooking for the people who needed it. But something was different now. She moved through the world with a new understanding. That her life wasn't small. That her choices mattered. That every plate of food she served, every kind word she spoke, every moment she chose to see someone instead of looking away, it all added up to something. It all meant something. One afternoon in late November, she was cleaning her grill when she heard the sound. Deep, powerful, the kind of sound that makes you look up. Engines. Multiple engines. She turned around and froze. For black SUVs were pulling up to the curb in front of her stand. They moved in formation, smooth and deliberate, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. The street went quiet. People stopped walking. Her regulars, the ones who came every day, stood still, watching. The engines idled. The doors stayed closed. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly one door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, in his early 40s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. His shoes were polished. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. But there was something else in his face. Something that didn't match the expensive clothes. Emotion. Raw, unfiltered emotion. He stood there for a moment, looking at her stand, and then the other doors opened. More men stepped out. Security, she realized. They scanned the street, positioned themselves around the vehicles. Then the back door of the lead SUV opened, and the boy stepped out. But he wasn't dressed in his usual worn clothes. He was wearing new jeans, clean jacket, shoes that actually fit. His hair was combed. He looked healthy. He looked cared for. And standing behind him, her hand on his shoulder, was the woman. She looked stronger than she had in months. There was color in her face, confidence in her posture. She was wearing new clothes too, clean, pressed. She looked like a completely different person. The man in the suit walked toward the stand, and the boy and the woman followed. The entire street watched. No one spoke. No one moved. They just watched. The man stopped a few feet from her cart. He looked at her, and she saw tears forming in his eyes. "You fed my nephew," he said. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, just truthful. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She looked at the boy, then at the woman, then back at the man. "Your nephew," she finally said. The man nodded. He gestured to the woman. "This is my sister. We had a falling out years ago. Something stupid. Something that doesn't matter anymore. I didn't know she was sick. I didn't know she'd lost everything." He paused, his voice breaking. "I've had people looking for her for over a year. But she didn't want to be found." The woman stepped forward, her eyes wet. "I was ashamed," she said quietly. "I thought you'd blame me for getting sick. For failing. I didn't want you to see me like that." The man's face crumpled. He reached out and pulled his sister into a hug. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have tried harder. I should have never let our fight get in the way." The woman held him tight, crying into his shoulder. The boy stood between them, watching, and she could see the relief on his face. The weight he'd been carrying was finally lifting. After a moment, the man pulled back and turned to her. "My name is Daniel Wright," he said, "and I owe you everything." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." He smiled through his tears. "Yes, I do. You kept them alive. You gave them dignity when the world had taken everything else. You didn't do it for recognition. You didn't do it for money. You did it because it was right. And that," he said, his voice firm, "is the rarest thing in this world." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He held it out to her. She stared at it, not moving. "What is this?" she asked. "It's a check," he said, "for $100,000. The street erupted. People gasped. Someone started crying. She felt the world tilt. She took a step back, shaking her head. "No," she said immediately. "I can't take that." Daniel didn't lower his hand. "It's not charity," he said. "It's gratitude. My sister helped me years ago when I had nothing. She gave me money to start my company when no bank would touch me. She never asked for it back. Never expected anything. And I built everything I have because of that chance she gave me." He looked at his sister, then back at her. "I've been trying to pay her back for years, but she disappeared. And when I finally found her, I found out that you'd been doing what I should have been doing all along. Taking care of my family." She felt tears running down her face. Daniel stepped closer and placed the envelope on her cart. "Please," he said, "take it. Use it however you want. Expand your stand. Help other people. Pay off your debts. I don't care. Just take it. Because you deserve it. And because if my sister taught me anything, it's that kindness should always be honored." She looked at the envelope, then at the boy. He was watching her with those serious eyes. "It's okay," he said softly. "You helped us. Now let him help you." And something about hearing it from him, from the child who'd carried so much for so long, made her resistance crumble. She picked up the envelope with shaking hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "No," he said. "Thank you." He turned to the crowd that had gathered. "This woman," he said, his voice carrying down the street, "fed my nephew every single day. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know his story. She just saw a hungry child and decided to help. No cameras. No recognition. Just kindness." He looked back at her. "That's what the world needs more of. Not grand gestures. Not viral moments. Just people showing up for each other. Just people refusing to look away." The crowd started clapping. Slowly at first, then louder. People cheered. Some were crying. And she stood there, behind her little food stand, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Because she'd never wanted this. The attention. The recognition. The money. She just wanted to help. But maybe, she thought, maybe that was the point. Maybe the people who deserve recognition the most are the ones who never ask for it. Daniel stayed for another hour. He bought food for everyone on the street. He talked to her regulars, thanked them for being part of this community. He told them about the foundation he was starting in his sister's name to help families facing medical and housing crises. And he told them that this stand, this little corner of the world, was where it all began. Before he left, he knelt down in front of the boy. "You're gonna do great things," he said. "I know it." The boy nodded. "I'm gonna help people," he said, "like she did." Daniel smiled. "I believe you." Then he stood and turned to her one last time. "If you ever need anything," he said, "you call me." He handed her a business card. "Anything at all." She took the card and nodded, unable to speak. Daniel got back into the SUV. The doors closed. The engines started. And slowly, the 4 black vehicles pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. The crowd dispersed. Her regulars came up one by one to hug her, to congratulate her, to tell her they always knew she was special. But she didn't feel special. She felt the same as she always had. Just a woman trying to make it, trying to do the right thing, trying to matter. That night, alone in her apartment, she opened the envelope and stared at the check. $100,000. It was more money than she'd ever imagined having. It was freedom. It was security. It was proof that kindness didn't just ripple outward. Sometimes it came back. She thought about what she'd do with it. Pay off her debts, yes. Upgrade her equipment, yes. But more than that, she wanted to help other people. Other kids like the boy. Other families like his. Because she understood now that her purpose wasn't just to survive. It was to lift others up. To see them. To refuse to let them be invisible. Over the next year, she transformed her stand into something bigger. She partnered with local organizations to create a program that provided free meals to families in need. She hired staff from the neighborhood, people who understood struggle, people who knew what it meant to need help. She never advertised. She never sought attention. She just kept showing up, day after day, feeding people, seeing people, loving people. The boy came back to visit often. He was thriving now, doing well in school, playing sports, being a kid. Every time she saw him, her heart swelled, because this was what it was supposed to look like. Safety, stability, joy. One afternoon, about 2 years after the SUVs had arrived, the boy came to the stand with something in his hand. It was a drawing, crayon on construction paper. It showed 2 people standing in front of a little food stand. Above them, he'd written in careful letters, "Thank you for saving us." She took the drawing and held it like it was made of glass. "I didn't save you," she said softly. "You and your mom saved yourselves. I just helped a little. He shook his head. You helped a lot. And then he hugged her, and she knew without a doubt that this was what life was supposed to be about. Not perfection, not success, just connection, just love, just showing up for each other when it mattered most. How would you feel if you had the chance to change someone's life but weren't sure if you should get involved? Would you take the risk? Years passed. The boy graduated high school. He got accepted to college on a full scholarship. He wanted to study social work. Because of you, he told her. Because you showed me that helping people isn't just a job. It's a life. She cried when he said that. Not sad tears. Proud tears. Grateful tears. Because this boy, who'd once sat on a bench waiting for someone to see him, was now going to spend his life seeing others. The cycle continued. The program she'd started kept growing. More families were helped. More lives were changed. And through it all, she stayed grounded in the simplest truth she'd ever learned. Everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to be fed. Everyone deserves dignity. And it doesn't take a miracle to make that happen. It just takes someone willing to show up. Daniel stayed in touch. He'd call every few months to check in, to see how she was doing, to ask if there was anything she needed. The foundation he'd started in his sister's name had helped hundreds of families, and he always credited her. You showed me what was possible, he'd say. You showed me that one person, just showing up, can change everything. But she never felt like a hero. She just felt like someone who'd made a choice. To care when she could have walked away. To see when she could have looked past. To love when it would have been easier to stay closed off. And that choice, repeated every single day, had become her life. Had become her legacy. She's older now. Her hair is gray. Her hands move a little slower. But she still shows up every morning. Still unlocks the door. Still starts cooking. Because this isn't work to her anymore. It's life. It's purpose. It's the thing that makes her feel most like herself. And every time someone walks through the door, hungry or hurting or hoping, she sees them. Really sees them. And she remembers the boy on the bench. The woman on the mattress. The moment everything changed. Because that's when she learned the most important lesson of her life. That we're all connected. That when one of us hurts, we all hurt. And when one of us heals, we all heal. That small acts of kindness aren't small at all. They're everything. They're the foundation of what it means to be human. She thinks about that morning often. The morning the SUVs arrived. The way the entire street stopped. The way people stared. The way her world tilted on its axis. She remembers the fear she felt, the confusion, the overwhelming sense that something bigger than her was unfolding. And she remembers the moment she understood that the boy she'd been feeding wasn't just a hungry child. He was someone's nephew, someone's son, someone connected to a whole world she'd never seen. But that hadn't mattered, because even if those SUVs had never come, even if Daniel had never found them, even if she'd never received a dime, she would have kept feeding him. Because that's who she'd chosen to be. Someone who showed up. Someone who cared. Someone who refused to let a child go hungry on her watch. The check changed her circumstances, but it didn't change her heart. That had always been the same. One evening, as she's closing up for the day, a young woman walks up to the stand. She's holding a baby, maybe 6 months old. The woman looks tired, scared, lost. The same look she'd seen on the boy's mother all those years ago. Excuse me, the woman says quietly. Are you still open? She looks at the clock. They closed an hour ago. But she looks at the woman's face, at the baby sleeping against her shoulder, and she knows the answer. Come in, she says, unlocking the door again. I'll make you something. The woman's eyes fill with tears. Thank you, she whispers. As she cooks, she watches the young woman sit at one of the tables, gently rocking her baby. She sees the way the woman's hands shake slightly, the way she keeps glancing at the door like she's afraid someone might walk in, the way she holds her child like it's the only thing in the world that matters. She brings over a plate of food, warm, fresh, made with care. The woman looks at it like she hasn't seen a real meal in days. How much? She asks, reaching into her pocket. She shakes her head. Nothing. Just eat. The woman stares at her. Why, she asks. It's the same question she'd been asked years ago. The same question she'd asked herself 1,000 times since. And the answer is still the same. Because you need it, she says simply. And because I can. The woman starts to cry. Quiet tears that she tries to hide, turning her face away, not wanting to seem weak or ungrateful. She sits down across from her. You don't have to hide, she says gently. Whatever you're going through, you're not alone. And the woman breaks. She tells her story between bites. About the abusive relationship she just left. About the shelter that's full. About the job she lost because she couldn't afford childcare. About the family that turned their back on her. About the fear that she's failing her daughter. About the exhaustion of trying to survive when the world keeps pushing you down. She listens to every word. She doesn't interrupt. She doesn't offer empty platitudes. She just listens. Because sometimes that's what people need most. Not solutions. Not advice. Just someone willing to hear them. When the woman finishes talking, she reaches across the table and takes her hand. I'm gonna help you, she says. Not just tonight. Really help you. The woman looks at her with disbelief. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. She smiles. I didn't know a little boy who used to sit on a bench across the street either. But he changed my life. Maybe you're supposed to be here. Maybe this is how it works. We help each other. That's it. That's the whole thing. Over the next few months, she helps the young woman get back on her feet. She connects her with housing resources, helps her find childcare, even lets her work part-time at the stand, bringing her daughter along, setting up a little playpen in the corner. And she watches as the woman transforms, as the fear leaves her eyes, as the confidence returns, as she starts to believe again that life can be good. 1 year later, the woman is managing the stand. She's saved enough money to get her own apartment. Her daughter is thriving. And she started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter, helping other women who are where she used to be. Because that's how it works. The cycle of kindness doesn't end. It multiplies. It spreads. It becomes something bigger than any one person. It becomes a movement, a way of life, a reminder that we're all in this together. She's 75 now. Her body is slower. Her energy isn't what it used to be, but her heart hasn't changed. Every morning, she still wakes up before dawn, still makes her way to the stand, still starts cooking, because this is who she is. This is what she was meant to do. The boy, now a grown man, visits every few weeks. He brings his wife, his children, 3 beautiful kids who call her grandma even though there's no blood relation. Because family isn't just about biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you when you need it most. One Sunday afternoon, they're all sitting together at one of the tables. The man's oldest daughter, maybe 7 years old, asks her a question. Grandma, why do you give food away for free? She looks at the little girl's curious face and thinks about how to answer. Because a long time ago, she says, your daddy needed help. And I was in a position to give it. And that changed everything. Not just for him. For me too. The little girl thinks about this. But what if you run out of money? She asks. She smiles. Then I'll figure it out. Just like I always have. But some things are more important than money. Like making sure people don't go hungry. Like making sure they know someone cares. The little girl nods, processing this. When I grow up, she says, I want to help people too. Just like you. She feels tears prick her eyes. Then you will, she says. I know it. Because kindness runs in your family. That night, after everyone has gone home, she sits alone in the quiet stand. The lights are dim. The air smells like coffee and bread. She thinks about the journey. About that first day she handed a sandwich to a scared little boy. About the moment she decided not to look away. About all the lives that have intersected with hers since then. About the woman who became her friend. About Daniel who became like a brother. About the young mother she helped last year. About all the people whose names she never learned but whose faces she'll never forget. And she realizes something. This was never about her. It was never about being special or heroic or remarkable. It was about being human. It was about choosing every single day to see people, to care about their stories, to believe that everyone deserves dignity and kindness and a chance to be okay. That's it. That's the whole thing. No grand philosophy, no complex strategy, just showing up, just caring, just refusing to let people be invisible. She stands up slowly, her joints protesting, and walks to the door. She locks it behind her and steps out onto the street. The same street where 4 black SUVs once pulled up and changed everything. The same street where a little boy once sat on a bench, waiting. The same street where she chose to care. And as she walks home through the quiet neighborhood, she thinks about legacy, about what she'll leave behind when she's gone. It won't be money. It won't be fame. It won't be anything you can hold in your hands. It will be the people whose lives she touched. The boy who became a social worker. The young mother who now helps others. The countless individuals who walked through her doors hungry and left feeling seen. That's what lasts. That's what matters. That's what changes the world. Not one big moment, but 1,000 small ones. 1,000 choices to care. 1,000 times she could have walked away but didn't. 1,000 meals served with love. A few weeks later, she receives a letter. It's from Daniel. She opens it and reads, "Dear friend, I'm writing to tell you something I should have said years ago. You didn't just save my sister and nephew. You saved me too. Before I found them, before I understood what you'd done, I was successful but empty. I had money but no meaning. I had built a company but forgotten why it mattered. You reminded me. You showed me that the purpose of having resources isn't to accumulate more. It's to help people, to see them, to refuse to let them fall through the cracks. Because of you, I've changed how I live, how I do business, how I see the world. The foundation we started has helped over 5,000 families now. We're opening our 50th location next month. And every single one of them exists because you fed a hungry child, because you refused to look away. I know you don't want recognition. I know you do this because it's who you are, not because you want praise. But I need you to know, you changed everything. For all of us. Thank you. With gratitude, Daniel." She folds the letter carefully and puts it in her pocket. Then she goes back to work. Because 5,000 families is wonderful. But there's still someone who'll walk through her door tomorrow. Still someone who needs to be seen. Still someone who deserves kindness. And she'll be there. Just like always. The years continue to pass. The stand keeps running. The program keeps growing. And she keeps showing up. Day after day. Year after year. Until one morning, she doesn't wake up. She passes away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78. And the neighborhood mourns. The funeral is packed. Hundreds of people show up. People she fed. People she helped. People whose lives she touched in ways big and small. Daniel gives the eulogy. He talks about his sister. About his nephew. About the day everything changed. And he talks about her. About the woman who showed up when no one else did. Who saw people when the world looked past them. Who proved that one person, armed with nothing but compassion, can change everything. After the service, they gather at the stand. It's been closed since she died, but Daniel arranged for it to stay open, to keep running, to continue the work she started. Because that's what she would have wanted. The young mother she helped years ago is running it now. And she's training others. Teaching them not just how to cook, but how to see people. How to serve with dignity. How to love without conditions. The boy, now a man in his 30s, stands outside the stand with his children. He tells them stories about the woman who changed his life. About how she fed him when he was hungry. How she never asked for anything in return. How she taught him that kindness is the most powerful force in the world. "Will we still come here?" his youngest asks. "Always," he says. "This place is part of who we are. It's where we learned what it means to care." And the children nod, understanding in the way children do that something important happened here. Something that mattered. Something worth remembering. As the sun sets on that day, people begin to leave. But they don't leave empty. They leave changed. Reminded. Reconnected to something fundamental about what it means to be human. The stand remains. The work continues. The legacy lives on. Not in monuments or statues or buildings with her name on them, but in the lives of people who learned from her example, who saw what she did and decided to do the same, who understood that changing the world doesn't require wealth or power or fame. It just requires showing up, seeing people, caring. That's it. That's everything. And years later, when people ask about the stand, about how it started, about why it matters, they tell the story. About a woman who ran a food stand. About a little boy who sat on a bench. About 4 black SUVs that arrived one morning. About how kindness ripples outward in ways we can never fully measure. About how one person's choice to care can change everything. They tell the story not because it's extraordinary, but because it's not. Because it's the story of what any of us could do if we chose to. If we decided that the person in front of us matters. That their hunger matters. That their pain matters. That their life matters. They tell the story because it's true. And because truth, especially truth about love and kindness and human connection, is the thing we need most. So if you're watching this and wondering what you can do, the answer is simple. Look around. See who's hungry. See who's hurting. See who's waiting on a bench, hoping someone will notice. And then do something about it. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Make a sandwich. Offer a kind word. Show up. Care. Refuse to look away. Because that's how the world changes. Not through grand gestures or viral moments, but through ordinary people making extraordinary choices. Through individuals deciding that compassion isn't optional. It's essential. Through humans remembering that we're all connected. That we're all in this together. That when one of us suffers, we all suffer. And when one of us is lifted up, we all rise. That's the lesson. That's the truth. That's what a little boy and a food stand and 4 black SUVs taught a neighborhood, a city, and eventually the world. That love is powerful. That kindness matters. That showing up changes everything. So show up. See people. Care about their stories. Feed them if they're hungry. Help them if they're struggling. Love them because they're human and humans deserve love. Do it not because you'll get recognition. Not because you'll be rewarded. But because it's right. Because it's who you were meant to be. Because in the end, the only question that really matters is this. Did you love well? Did you see people? Did you make the world a little bit better because you were in it? She did. The woman who ran a food stand on a forgettable street in a neighborhood nobody noticed. She loved well. She saw people. She made everything better. And her story, the story of how she fed a homeless boy who turned out to be connected to a world she never knew, reminds us all of something vital. That we never really know who we're helping. We never fully understand the ripples our kindness creates. We never see the whole picture. But that's not the point. The point is to help anyway. To care anyway. To show up anyway. Because that's what it means to be human. That's what it means to live a life that matters. That's what it means to love. Before we go, we want to hear from you. Have you ever helped someone without knowing their story? Or has someone shown up for you when you needed it most? Share your story in the comments below. Let's remind each other that kindness is everywhere. That good people exist. That we're all capable of changing someone's life. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of something important, please share it. Not for us, but because someone else might need to hear it. Someone else might be sitting on a bench right now, waiting, hoping, wondering if anyone sees them. Let's make sure they know the answer is yes. Someone sees them. Someone cares. And that someone could be you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being the kind of person who believes that love, in all its simple, everyday forms, is the answer. Now go out there and prove it. Show up for someone. See them. Feed them. Love them. Change everything. Because you can. And because they're worth it. Every single one of them. Just like that little boy on the bench. Just like his mother fighting to survive. Just like the woman who refused to look away. They're all worth it. And so are you.